Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're really happy to see you all for this wonderful conversation, artists and conversation, more specifically, on art practice in challenging environments. So I am Ghazaleh Zogheib. I'm one of the curators of the Kalila Wa Dimna exhibition. I will be moderating this alongside my other partner and curator, Rania Mneimneh. We are very happy to welcome you here with us. In this online talk, we will have artists Dima Nashawi and Ali Dalloul and Alison Fraser, who is the founder of Play for Progress, a Croydon-based charity. They will, all three of them, discuss collaborative art practices in challenging work environments. We were going to host also Dema One, who is another one of our artists in this wonderful exhibition. Unfortunately, he had a bit of an unforeseen emergency, so we'll have to do this one without him. Hopefully he's all right, though. Dima and Ali will discuss the challenges and the interruptions affecting the creative workflow, which might happen when you're living in an unstable area. They will talk about the necessity of addressing social and political issues as forms of resistance, archiving, and continuity. Alison, who is a musician as well as the founder of Play for Progress, will discuss the approach taken by Play for Progress in their art and music classes with young asylum seekers. Before we start, I'm going to introduce everyone. So, as we said earlier, Ali Dalloul is an artist. He is a Lebanese editor, filmmaker, and video essayist. He holds a Master's of Art in Editing and Post-Production from the London South Bank University. His personal work consists of collecting and editing audiovisual elements to address sociopolitical subjects. His output challenges copyrighted materials and is mostly showcased on the internet as a public space. Dima Nashawi is, again, as I said, an artist. She is a clown, and she is a visual storyteller who collects and reflects tales from Syria. She focuses on documenting tales of ordinary Syrians, their life under conflict, and their relationships with their cities, which are an integral part of shaping the Syrian collective memory. She is also keen on using her illustrations to advocate for women's rights and their fight against patriarchal structures. Dima is, as we mentioned, a clown performer with Clown Me In, a clown theater company based in Beirut. The organization uses clowning to spread laughter and provide relief to disadvantaged communities across Lebanon. In 2018, she was listed among the BBC 100 Women, a list that highlights some of the most inspiring and influential women from around the world. Her artworks were featured in exhibitions in Beirut, Brussels, Paris, and London. Dima holds a master's in art and cultural management from King's College London and a BA in sociology from Damascus University. Finally, let me introduce Play for Progress a little more. So as I mentioned, Alison is the founder of Play for Progress, which is a Croydon-based charity that delivers therapeutic and educational music and arts programs, advocacy and well-being support for unaccompanied young people seeking asylum in the UK. The organization harnesses the power of community engagement in the arts and creative therapies to build healthy foundations for resilient relationships that support and amplify the voices of those young people. I will now let Rania take over. Are you ready?
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Perfect.
Yes. I'll just also talk a bit about the exhibition for those who do not know the outer context. It's actually like the last talk for our artist talk series in Kalila Wa Dimna Asian Tales for Troubled Times exhibition, at least for now, during the live exhibition at P21 Gallery. And the exhibition basically took an ancient famous fables called Kalila Wa Dimna. It was translated to more than 40 languages. And it's through the Arabic translation that it got into Europe. And the idea behind the project started research-based, and it was about taking the fables and sharing it with the artist and the organization for them to actually reinterpret it and address relevant and pressing issues from our times. They all focused on one chapter, the chapter of the four friends, with the main theme on friendship. You can have more information on our website. Zalia can share our website link on the chat. And so I'm really excited to discuss the theme, but I will quickly ask you as artist and participant in the exhibitions to share what drew you to participate to the exhibition, and how was the creative practice and the process on the artworks in the exhibition. So who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay, good.
Should we introduce ourselves now or later on?
Sure.
All right. So hello everyone. Thank you for attending. I'm Ali Dalul. I'm an editor, filmmaker, and video essayist from Lebanon. I am gonna share my screen to show you a bit of my work. So as I mentioned, I make some short films. This one is Circular. I made in 2019. It was part of my master's program in London. The film was screened in multiple festivals around the world, but it was in 2020, so most of them were online festivals. And this film was about a group of women who gathered together during a summer night in Lebanon, and something happened, which is some missiles are flying over their head, and it disrupts their situation. The other project I'm going to talk about is the Quarantine Series 2020. It's a series that I did back in 2020 during the first 2 weeks of COVID, where I gathered voice messages from friends and family members, and I created where I also combined footages from films and online sources to transform all these stories into an audiovisual video essay. So I was doing this for 14 days, and then I combined everything together in a 15 minutes film. All my work is available on Vimeo. I guess we're going to share the link on the chat for anyone who's interested in watching. Um, I'm going to also talk about my work with Rihla magazine, that is an independent magazine in Lebanon. It tackles sociopolitical subjects. And so with each theme, each month, I do a video essay related to it. So we talk about politics, subjects like nostalgia, alienation, of course, the Beirut explosion, and many other subjects. What I usually do is that I gather footage from many films, copyrighted films and sources, but at the same time, I don't own the copyrights of anything. So this is the basis of my work. But I post my work mostly online, so it's also coming from online and staying online. My personal work is mostly video essays. I do short video essays about different sociopolitical subjects. I'm also mainly my job is an editor, so I edit documentaries, short films. One of the films that I edited recently was Warsha. It won the Sundance Best International Short Fiction. And I also do music videos and other films. So this is to talk briefly about my work and what I do. So I sent you my Vimeo link. Maybe we can play something from there.
Sure.
The first minute of the quarantine series, or
let me have a look. So
for a long time, like I haven't been able to really put my family.
Perché ci sono gli scaffali della pasta fuori? Ma che cosa sta succedendo? Ma quando è scoppiata la seconda guerra mondiale c'era stato un panico così.
And I'm super stoked for this, guys. I've never been on a private jet before. I've never even flown first class.
Episode 1885, how to be the instant influencer in your life, in your life, in your life, your life.
I'm sorry. Please stop. You're scaring myself. You're scaring myself.
Thank you, Ali.
Okay, I'll go after because my work is connected to Ali. We work together in this lovely exhibition, and we created a short animation called فحدثني. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Dima. Thank you for being here. Then maybe later we talk about the project, me and Ali together. So I'm an illustrator and animator, and previously I'm an animator, but I did to animation, and I am a clown. Also, I have other experience in different art, performance, and visual storytelling. I'm going to show you part of my work. So this is my portfolio. I'm going to show you some stuff. The story of my illustration started by reflecting my own ideas and feelings. And this illustration called Waiting. And basically I was waiting for my crush to call me, and I wish he didn't. Then I moved towards to reflect on the incident and events that is happening in Syria while I was in Beirut or in London, because I moved to Beirut in 2013 and then to London to 2015 to study my master's. This illustration called She and the City, it represents me while studying in London, waiting for the decision of UK to interfere in shelling the northern Syria. It reflects my anxiety because I know that many civilians will be died in between. This is part of my series of the cities I am connected to. It's called Idlib, the Compassionate. And through this illustration, I try to document the event of Idlib receiving many Syrians from the southern area and rural Damascus after being evicted by the government. This called Beirut, and it reflects my feeling after the explosion of August 4, and its name is the quote written in Arabic is, "The revolution will be born from the womb of misery." This is, of course, something related to Palestine and the Intifada as kind of support for the constant fight of the Palestinians to have back their lands. And as part, another thing that I worked on with my illustration is participating in campaigns. So this was a part of Al-Ghouta campaign, which was advocating that many civilians are in an area called Al-Ghouta, which is in rural Damascus, and reflecting their love stories, their fears, their hopes, trying to save their lives from the invasion of the government to the area. This is part of Stigma is Violence, and it is about stigmatizing women who've been detained in the Syrian government detention, and because some of the cultural communities and the cultural aspect stigmatized them when they talked about their their experience of being sexual harassed or raped, while I think they were brave. Also, this is part of a campaign called the Liberated Tea, which also talks about how some men are only winning the elections because of their big mustaches, while there are many qualified women are not capable to reach the parliament in some of the Arabic countries. This is my recent, and it won. I'm happy that it won the prize of the festival called Femme Art, and became the illustration cover for this festival. And the theme was From Revolution to Evolution. Beside my work as an illustrator, I tried several experiences. One of them is basically called The Story of Najud, which is shadow puppets and storytelling performance of a story that I wrote, inspired by a girl that was living in a refugee camp. And this girl created a fictional character called Najud, and that she dreamt to travel abroad with her. And I toured with this performance in many areas in Lebanon. Finally, if I have time, I'm going to show you a trailer of my first animation called The Secret of Raindrops. I'm going to show you the trailer and maybe tell you a little bit about it.
أنا عطيتك روحي يلا يلا اضحكي يلا يلا اضحكي.
So basically, The Secret of Raindrops is a tribute to my friend who was detained in Damascus for a year and 7 months. It represents the prisoners of conscience in a very symbolic and fictional story. The full movie is on YouTube. I'm gonna send also the link of Mneimneh, is the organization basically that I clown with them, and we tour in around Lebanon, and we perform for refugees, refugee camps, and marginalized areas in Lebanon.
Now, shall I jump in? Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Allison. I am one of the co-founders of Play for Progress. If you would like to have a look at our website, it does describe who we are, what we're about, and hopefully gives you access to a whole number of projects that we've delivered. I'm just going to show you kind of the extent of the homepage here, where you can really explore past exhibitions, murals, and a bit more about our work here. I am going to speak to you, though, for a moment and just leave this here. So we are a Croydon-based charity. We deliver therapeutic and educational music and arts programs, advocacy, and well-being services to nourish, support, and amplify the voices of unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people. We work to promote community resilience through trauma-informed creative engagement in the arts, and we curate collaborative performances and exhibitions to encourage positive community bonding, and do everything we can to amplify the voices of young people who are attempting to navigate the exceedingly hostile asylum system in the UK. Just a little bit about our work specifically. We do offer a range of both creative programs and crucial support services that go hand in hand. They have been designed and created in direct response to needs expressed by young people, all in an attempt to help them establish and deepen their foundation of well-being so that they can survive the damaging and arduous asylum process and reduce instances of re-traumatization. We very much see our role as supporting young people out of fight and flight and into spaces where healing can happen. That's all I really wanted to share about us to get us started.
Thanks,
Okay.
Alison.
Yeah, well, a lot to talk about. So I will actually start with you, Dima and Ali, if you can share a bit about your journey with arts in challenging environments, the issues you felt. You did address this a bit in the presentation, but if you can talk more, the issues that you felt you need to address, how do you approach those issues, especially when they are complex issues, and how do people in general react to your work?
So basically, the project that we did with Kalila Wa Dimna exhibition was created in a very difficult situation. I'm living in Beirut with Ali, and basically Beirut during in the beginning of the making of the project, the revolution started in October, and then the pandemic, and then many economical crises and the power cuts. So basically, me and Ali were struggling because either we don't have the stability of what the work needs, or basically we were psychologically affected by the conditions that surrounding us. I think we don't have the sense of normality in our country. And we need to try to create our bubble in order to create, or maybe sometimes this instability provoke us and motive us to create something, because we need to reflect on our feelings and our ideas. We want to express the agony or the anger that we are having through our art. And so it is also a kind of psychological support for ourselves and a message for others, or maybe also like a trial to document essential events that our countries are going through. Ali, would you like to?
Yeah, so first of all, Dima told me about this exhibition and this film. And even though I didn't have any previous experience with animation, I decided to go on with this journey with Dima. First of all, because we know the Kalila and Dimna stories since we were kids. So it was a great reminder of this ancient tale. And because the exhibition really focused on the Arabic language and its impact on the spreading of the story, I guess that was one of the main reasons I decided to just venture with Dima and go on with the making of this film. Of course, so many things happened in the past 2 years. Dima mentioned some of them. There was always the psychological impact of everything that's happening around us, and our political involvement with the situation. Because when you live in a country where no rest, everything is so chaotic, and you have one of the worst economic crises in history, you can't really just close on yourself and say, I'm an artist who can just live their life away from all the problems. Our apartments really literally exploded. I was in my apartment, so I don't have electricity just like anyone else. So our artistic process is really related to the political situation, and but at the end, we make art because that's the only way we can survive. And so during the making of this film, we were pushing each other each time, just giving some good energy because everyone was falling around us. Everyone is leaving the country. So when I think yesterday we were at the exhibition and everything went back as a flashback of the making of this film. And at the end, we did it, but it was super challenging. Maybe we can discuss that during the conversation.
I wanted to ask you, so if you can share a bit about the topics and issues that you address in your work. You did share a bit in the presentation. What are the topics that you feel you need to address? And you mentioned about being in a challenging environment and you feel the need to address certain topics, but maybe you as an artist, you also want to address other topics. So how do you balance that? What are the topics that you address and how people react to them?
Yeah, so first of all, when we create art in Lebanon or in the Middle East, we always know that there are so limited spaces and places to exhibit our work. There are always like restrictions on funding. Sometimes it follows the trend, sadly. You have to fall into some keywords. So many artists start adapting their art according to what's trendy, and this for me this is not political engagement. For me political engagement is when you address a speech that is anti I don't know anti system, that is very corrupt or anti-capitalist, or when you really have something that is talking with people and touching them. So I'm very thankful for the internet in general, because without the internet we wouldn't be able to know about so many things and watch so many films. So I studied cinema and I'm a filmmaker, but 99% of my knowledge comes from watching films online for free, which is something that is not allowed in most of the first world countries. And so when I grew up and I became an editor, I just wanted to play with all this material that is copyrighted. But the way I had access to this material, I just wanted to play with it and give it to people and say that it's fine to just work with archival footage or material in order to change the narrative. So what I usually do, let's say after the Beirut explosion, the only way I could express my anger and everything was through my work. So I did a video essay with Rihla magazine called Limbo. And so in this video essay, I was criticizing Western psychology when it comes to big disasters. What I want to say, if I want to give an example, because before the Beirut explosion, I always had a fear that something is going to explode, because we live in a situation where everything is really, we have wars. I lived wars in 2006 and before. And so when I used to say this to my psychiatrist, she used to say that it is a rational fear, but in a way it's irrational because you can't keep thinking about this. And one day my apartment exploded and I felt that my fear was super rational. And if you want to adapt Western psychology to Middle Eastern people or Arab or people in the Arab world or anywhere where you have war, you really have a problem, because I can understand if someone is living in a very safe country, if they have the constant fear of a bomb, it's really something, maybe it's irrational. But when you live under constant threat of wars, of the situation in the Middle East, it's very rational. So this is where my work this is where I like to play with my work, to criticize the norm, to give an alternative speech. And what I do is most of my work is zero budget, because I gather footage that has already been shot, and my storytelling comes from editing this material. So you can see in my work references from films that you already watched, but in a different context. And for me, I'm not saying that it is a form of resistance, but at the same time, it's also something that I need as a person to just let go of things. So part of my, I don't know if I can say, healing process comes from playing with this. And I totally understand if I want to have any future in Europe, or because I'm thinking about leaving like everyone else, my work is at risk because yesterday at the gallery, I just wanted to download a few things from YouTube for the workshop. And I discovered that the website I use in Lebanon doesn't work here because everything is copyrighted. So I thought about the limitations that would come even if I change my environment.
Most often, the thing you are obsessively scared of is actually a more neutral occurrence onto which you are projecting your very real fears about something a bit deeper. The feeling of anxiety is real. What's not real is the context you're making up in your head.
Dear everyone, I don't think it's been easy, but I understand now that we are all alike. Are you okay, Jen? Yes, yes.
What are your fears? Pretty much the regular, fears.
I know that I used to call all your fears irrational, but they turned out to be true. What can I do for you? Answer me.
Dear everyone, don't think it's been easy, but I understand now that we're not and never will be alike. That empathy you claim is a lie, because all you are is society's morality police, whose duty is to erase my obscenity from the surface of the earth so that the bourgeoisie won't feel sick.
Maybe I can play your favorite song. It might help.
Interesting, Ali, very much interesting how each environment has their own challenges and their own, different things to adapt to. But you mentioned something very important about, reflecting on what is rational, what is irrational. And I saw Alison nodding when we talked about, psychology. And this is something, Alison, you address a lot at Play for Progress. How do you, do creative work, creative practice, but also trauma-informed approaches when you work with young people coming from all over the world. So in that sense, I know that Play for Progress, the young people come and can find a safe place. So if you can share a bit about those trauma-informed practices and what is the role of arts in this context? How can you tell us how the different ways art, music are incorporated within the programs at Play for Progress? And how do the young people approach these creative practices?
Absolutely. What a fabulous loaded bunch of questions, and so important. I mean, the number one step for us, and of course I can only speak about our organization's experience, but it's being aware that some of our young people are bringing exactly those experiences that Ali described with them into the room. So the very first question of, well, how do you create a safe space, especially when the majority of staff perhaps don't have that form of lived experience? What level of self-education do you need to go through to make sure that to understand what ingredients do make up a safe space? So there's been tons of research and education of ourselves and our staff to go into what is trauma-informed practice, and looking at the sector of supporting people who have sought asylum or gained refugee status. what does the sector do to provide any any awareness or any support that understands young people's lived experiences? The answer is that the sector is absolutely horrendous at it and is re-traumatizing in and of itself, and so doesn't do anything to cater to creating a space that feels safe and is built on any of the principles of a trauma-informed organization. If anyone is interested, those include safety. There are lots of different labels, but I think it's an interesting thing to name. There are 6 that tend to hang all the rest of the work on, and it's safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, and the last one being cultural, historical, and gender issues. I mean, that's everything that sums up being a human, really. And they can sound like really trite buzzword labels, but when you really dig into what does it take to healthily sustain a community and provide consistent relationships for young people and adults alike that can support community resilience and healing, that's when you really dig into what our work is. You then asked me about the intersection of music and art. We have to understand that young people who are seeking asylum unaccompanied, so on their own under the age of 18, when you end up coming to the UK, people are coming at very different times from very different parts of the world. And so how can you enhance, nonverbal exchange that can contain emotional or cultural material, but perhaps isn't dependent on verbal language. And those have been exceedingly powerful mediums for a lot of cultural and emotional exchange without having to go into a verbally described experience that may be traumatizing for a young person to attempt to share, especially considering the hostility of the asylum process, where young people are asked to rename and retell the really horrendous experiences they carry with them in highly unheld environments where the implication of the people hosting those interviews, it's often assuming that young people are not telling the truth about their experiences. So music and using music and art to foster positive exchanges, not just positive, to be honest. I mean, it's dealing with the depth of the content, but nonverbal exchanges of some of that interaction. And the third part of your question, can you remind me what it was?
Actually, that it's continuing on this. So if you can give an example, of a creative process, like for example in Kalila,
sure.
How did you approach it with artist Dima Karut and Simon Roth, who's also a musician and composer? If you can share, because you have a program.
Yeah, we do.
You run on programs, and when you take a collaboration, an art collaboration, how do you incorporate that within Play for Progress program, and how did it go? Yeah,
absolutely. So for Kalila, storytelling is such a rich area to explore with any group of people, but especially with young people. And so being able to dig into the tale of the four friends for us just laid so nicely within our programs. We have intensives that are 3 or 4 days long at half terms. And so this was the time period that we used to really dig into this story. Although in previous weeks, before we dug in that intensive way, we did lay the seeds in our drama therapist-led Tuesday afternoon classes. Explorations of stories, what fables, what moral stories, what cultural stories do we carry with us, and how they inform how you interact with the world. So we planted some seeds along the way and then dove in at this half-term project. And to be clear in bringing this all to the theme of how do you work in challenging environments, there's so much variability. We do not demand young people's enrollment or engagement on any consistent level. To be honest, their lives are incredibly complex and they have so many demands on them. So number one thing is we want young people to have choice about when they engage with the space. So how do you work with so much variability of young people popping in and out, and the complex needs? And so in this half term, we laid the foundation of the story to begin with in terms of English and Arabic exchange of the tales. Young people are very good at supporting one another with translation, but also making that in itself part of an exploration, pulling apart the words in the tales so that we could really dig into what was being shared, and engaging with it poetically and musically as well. So we took the story, pulled it apart together in English and Arabic. We then explored, the development of visuals that might represent the characters, which we could then use throughout the rest of the project. And throughout that time, we also explored sonic storytelling. So with each character, considering its role in the tale, using improvisation and recording music and a fabulous software program called Forrester to explore, sonic storytelling and how that can lay in with visuals. So for us, our approach is highly organic. It's very much a case of having all of these toys in a toy box and starting with that theme, digging in, and then seeing where it leads and where the young people want to take it. There you go.
Yeah, this is definitely, this is amazing. And we saw it in the final installation anyways. We saw the process of the sketching, and each young person had the story in 3 scenes. Sketching was important, capturing the mood of the story. For those who are not familiar with the chapter of the tale Friends, it's a story mainly of friendship that builds through storytelling between 4 animals. So it's kind of relevant in the context of Playful Progress. It's about friendship, but also coming from very different backgrounds, different perspectives. And it was really nice when the young people visited the gallery and they were reacting to the work. And the music section is really nice, where you can sit and, interact with the music and create like different soundtracks. And you feel like this approach actually allowed each person to to share from their heritage, but also from what they like to say within the context they are in London. So yeah, this is amazing.
I'd love to just jump in just to clearly name what you just shared, which is the young we then followed up the project with visiting the exhibition with young people so they could see their work displayed. And there's something highly transformative about seeing themselves featured in a really positive public light, where they could watch people watching and looking at their work and really being seen. And what's the fundamental principle of our work across all of the mediums and whatever form we engage is ensuring that young people feel seen and heard. So thank you to the exhibition for enabling that in such a strong and powerful way, because it's really made an impact.
Yeah, and it also goes back to your work as an organization and the idea of interdisciplinary collaboration, which matters a lot in terms of access, and we can talk about that quickly. But stories and storytelling, Dima and Ali, I had so many questions, but we're running out of time. I'll give you the choice of answering one of the questions. So one of the questions was about how do you balance between your personal aspiration as an artist and what is happening around you? Maybe there are topics that are different that you want to address. And the other question was actually about storytelling, and how is storytelling present in your work in general? How important is telling stories and sharing narratives in often oppressive or marginalizing or polarized environments? So maybe Dima here, can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, so the personal intersects with the political and social surroundings. For me, I can't really differentiate between them. So I have like very few personal art, but always feel this urge to make something that tells something about Syria and something about what's going on in Beirut, if relevant. And it is part of my identity and my artistic identity. So um, I sometimes feel guilty if I feel that I'm not talking about the detainees that are still the situations and fate are not predictable in Syria, and there are no serious there is serious campaigns happening, but they are struggling to achieve some goals, and I always feel that maybe my art will do something about that. And also but at the same time, like, because the mainstream media is always like sharing the like the negative, and it's very heavy to watch all the disasters and catastrophes that are happening around the world. And to be honest, I can't do art for everything. I'm for every single incident and the events I'm engaged with. But still, like, sometimes not sometimes, basically tries as much as I can to show a positive aspect of the situation. So I don't want to make people depressed more. I want to find a sense of hope in what is going on, and showing the resilience of detainees and the former detainees, and how they managed to survive and talk bravely about what happened in their lives. This is I'm gonna like jump very fast to the other questions. This is a storytelling and basically creating a narrative that counter the narrative of the government. We started the revolution in Syria. Maybe someday our grandchildren will see all these stories that we created through arts, through films, through many outlets, and carry on what we started. So I have faith, I have belief that what happened and the stories and the narrative that we created will be continued some days, and our goal will be achieved. Maybe not in my time, not in my children's time, but maybe my grandchildren.
Yeah, Dima, this is actually quite emotional, especially when you are too close, right? To move it a bit, yeah, I know this is emotional.
I just want to add
Yeah.
a small thing to what Dima said. It is really very important to create our own narrative that counters the government or any occupation. But I guess we are where we live. We are maybe one step behind. We just need, first of all, to claim the narrative, to say that we have the right to tell our own stories as people. And if we want to address any story, I'm always because any filmmaker or artist can bring the stories of any community and tell it the way they want, which at the end you can't hear the voices of the community or the people. It was adapted, it was changed, it was manipulated. So claiming the narrative is so important, and to know that it's a right to tell our own stories, because uh, all the wars and fights throughout history were about a story and how someone decided to tell a certain story. Was it about religion or about politics or about anything? And so I think when we allow people, especially in countries where you have a lot of censorship, a lot of oppression, to just give them the right to tell their stories the way they want, not the way the media or the government wants, uh, that we can start from here before talking maybe us as artists about our narratives, because we are again part of this society, and we don't need any reminders, because politics is what we breathe on a daily basis. So if I don't have electricity right now, let's say in Lebanon, to work, So it means my work is political because it's attached to something that the government is doing, and that is political. So if I want to breathe, it is political. If I want to, so it's really, I'm always against art that is just for art. It should have an impact, something. As Dima said, it might be just a legacy for the other generations to know that some people decided to speak at a certain point, and we should always tell the stories. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And that I will go to your inspiration quote, just say it quickly. I considered any art pointless if it did not put itself at the disposal of political struggle. My art was to be a gun and a sword, by George Cross. I'm not sure I pronounced the surname, but yeah, to end on a positive note before the chat, Dima, you had a very nice experience, different a bit for you when you did like the shadow theater tour in different areas in Lebanon. Can you share about it artistically and as a human experience?
Well, I always dreamt of having this experience of being a storyteller, as it is one of the mediums that is very, it's part of the heritage that we have in the Levant. And basically it was an amazing experience because me with the team learned how to create a shadow puppets from scratch, and also like to try do some extras, like for example doing colored shadows. So it was amazing. The story, as I told you, that it was created, inspired by a girl from a refugee camp. And the story basically talks about a girl who lived in a city, and she had this friendship with the moon. The moon has white and black butterflies flies around him, but suddenly one day he lost his light, and also lost the butterflies, and because of that he started to cry, and his tears flooded the city. So basically Nujud had to travel and on a quest to grow to another country, and then come back to find a solution and save the moon. The performance was either a shadow manipulating shadow puppets, or me performing as a storyteller, and it's also included live singing, and it's also included live drawing, and it toured in many areas in Lebanon. And the tour itself, it was amazing because I met incredible people who are trying through their NGOs and initiative, trying to make an impact within their communities, and basically like be connected to artistic and cultural events that show a form of resistance. So it was an amazing experience.
Great. And speaking of the content, I mean, shadow theater in history has been very famous in Eastern cultures, and it was nice to see your illustration turned into shadow theater. You know, it brings another dimension, of course, with all the experience in touring. So Alison, I want to go back to you with a question about working with a different artist and different, you know, how do you approach it? Like, how was the work with Dima and Simon on the project, for example, or in general, like with other creative practices within Play for Progress?
I just want to mention one thing. This is a different Dima, guys. This is not Dima Nashawi. This is Dima Karut. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification, for sure. Well, because of a desire to keep relationships consistent throughout how we work and for our young people's benefit, and for the benefit of the whole team, Dima and Simon were already embedded within the team. But what we like to do is provide the opportunity for individual artists who are particularly drawn to a project to take lead on this. So how this worked is Dima brought real vision for how we were going to explore the tale visually. Simon had real vision for how we were going to explore it sonically. And then we had a number of additional musicians, artists, educators, and therapists from within our team who were present to support the development and exploration of that work. So it was wonderful to see how their individual voices also contributed to different forms of exploration and storytelling ourselves of how we wanted to recapture the story. So yeah, I hope that there is a way, if you haven't gotten to the exhibition already, get there so that you can really explore our sound software and see kind of the in-process work, because that's the real gem of our process. It's the process itself, and the results are dandy. But if there is any way that you can go and immerse yourself, I'd really welcome you to.
Alison, I was wondering, and maybe that's not a good question to ask, but is there a way people can support Play for Progress in any way?
It's so kind. Honestly, I think being all of these people here clearly are already interested in all of the right and fabulous things. So anything you can do to be an ally to people seeking refuge is the number one thing that I would ask of anyone already in this space. So I assume everyone already is on board there. Politically, there's tons of action to be taken to ensure that safe passages really are safe passages. It's a basic human right to seek refuge. Clearly, we are a charity, so any donations, financial or art supplies, otherwise, skills in kind is really hugely appreciated. But I'm just encouraged by the number of people here and the discussion already happening. This is the change that I think we're interested in contributing to and making. So you all are doing it already. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison.
Talia, you want to open the Q&A?
Yeah, sure. So everyone, please start posting more questions. I was just now writing an answer to Gil. Thank you for asking, Gil, and we're happy to see you here. Actually, before we jump in, I just had one last question for all three of you, and that's because I had the chance to get to know all three of you, but I'm curious, how important is humor in your work? I mean, Dima, maybe we can start with you. That is part of your work, isn't it? Part of clowning is humor and laughter, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. So basically, my answer to your question, I think it would be kind of answer to Gil as well. So basically, as I told you, I'm part of clowning, and clowning helped me a lot to survive, to be honest. Like all the disaster happening around me, it was my safe space where I go and just laugh and have this kind of bond with the team, and also like when we go and perform and make everybody laugh around us, whether they are children or adults, it's very rewarding and very uplifting. So through the clowning, I was psychologically, it helped me a lot because I was laughing as well. So I think it's therapy through laughter. I'm not very experienced in this. And also my illustration, and this is also specifically an answer to Gil, was a tool to help myself to bear the extreme events that happening in Syria, and to help myself through expressing myself through art. It was a magical tool, and it helped a lot. And I think this is exactly what the artists in Palestine are feeling and doing to express their opinions about the Nakba and other events in Palestine.
Thank you. Yes, so just to repeat Gil's question, so he mentioned Palestinian artists who said that the expectation of them to having to deal with the apartheid, they live under the Nakba, the occupation, etc., is really another kind of oppression, having to be forced to kind of express these things in their art. So actually art can be a safe place for them and a free place for them to be in, where they don't have to be necessarily discussing these issues. And he asked what your views are about this position. I think it's quite interesting, given Ali, you mentioned that to you all art is political, and I wonder if this isn't maybe something to do more with the interpretation of political. What are your thoughts on this, on the idea of having art as a safe space?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rania, go on, Rania.
No, exactly. I wanted to ask exactly what is your safe space and all that.
Yeah, so of course, I believe that art and the art practice in itself, not always the final product. While we're making art, it's a very safe space. And from my own experience and the experience of so many people that I know, we all escape in a way throughout our life certain society, certain system, and our only gateway was art. So it was about the expression. It was about the community that you would find as artists. So in Lebanon, everything is centralized, for example, in Beirut. So when we go to the university, we all meet from all regions in Lebanon. And I think with all the different backgrounds, art was there to, combine us and open a discussion and feel, most importantly, feel safe. But to go to the example of the Palestinians, I think that it's a very specific case, and this is my very personal opinion, but I think that any people living under occupation are not expected to do anything. I am totally against the pressure that anyone would put on people living under occupation to do or to be engaged in things where us, because if I want to compare myself to any Palestinian in Palestine, I feel so privileged, even though my country has its own problems. But I think it's my not necessarily duty, but since I have the privilege, I can take this lead in my art maybe and talk about things, but I don't expect someone living in Gaza or living in Palestine to do art constantly or to engage their work, because also there's this idea always that people living under occupation, they're only living in misery and that they don't have a life, they don't have families, they don't have feelings. And so when do artists living under occupation can express their life without feeling that they should be engaged in every political situation? So this is why I feel people under occupation are not supposed to do anything, or because they're under occupation, period. For me, it's already everything is affecting their life. Any person who feel a little bit more privileged or interested or can support in any way possible, this is how we can do it. And, of course, at the end, because I always relate everything to politics, again, I think even if a Palestinian artist would produce anything that in its form is not really political, maybe they're talking about a very personal problem, my own understanding and interpretation is that this is a political work, because in itself it's a resistance, because creating in times of occupation is a way of resistance anyway. And again, thanks for the internet for allowing us to connect and share our work, because yeah, I can't I know Palestinian people, but I can never visit Palestine, they can never visit Lebanon, and it's only through the cloud and the cyberspace that we can meet and share our work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ali. So I have two more questions here on the chat, and I'm not sure which order to go in. I'll continue with Alofis, who actually was asking concerning Palestine, how do children and adults even have access to materials to create art? So like Ali just said, we're very privileged to have the internet. But does one of you want to answer this? Or I mean, I can also answer it. I believe that art can come from anything. You can be very creative in a lot of ways, under oppression or not. What do you think, Ali?
Well, I think that there are always ways to do things, and this is And I guess the Palestinian example is a great example because throughout history they have showed so many ways of resistance, and it was not always about having the same weapon or tool as the oppressor, but through anything really. So I think there are always aid, there's help, there's a whole society that is working and functioning even under occupation. And I think having access to material and tool is limited, of course, but at the end there is access and there is also creation, because we forget that we also produce things. We don't always bring in things or import things. And Gaza is a great example. It's under siege, and even though it's a horrible situation there, yet people are able to make a living. And it's very, of course, questionable, this thing. But yeah, I think there are always ways, if that people want or anyone want to create art or to find tools and material. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. We had a
Sorry,
earlier. Yeah,
I just wanted to also say something. I mean, honestly, none of us is really in a position to answer because we are not Palestinian.
we're not in
live in
Palestine. Well, I am Palestinian, but I'm not in
yeah,
Palestine.
yeah. But I mean, what did I want to say? Hey, it's also very important not to homogenize, and say, because there are a lot of areas that are thriving. There are a lot of communities that are, like alive, very much alive, and producing work, whether within Palestine or within the diaspora. So I think we need to just bear in mind not to generalize about how the situation is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very good point, Rania. Thank you for mentioning that. I just wanted to go back just so we don't forget Anya's question about trauma. And I think that was directed to you, Alison. She was asking about how can we, or how do we categorize trauma? How do we, I guess what, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anya, but I believe what she's asking is, what are the steps to identify trauma when it's encroached in young people, before it becomes disruptive in an artistic context, if that makes sense.
Sure. From our perspective, it's creating a space that can handle any level that a young person brings into the space and has experienced. So for us, how that manifests is we have built our whole organization onto a skeleton of organizational health, and how do you constantly revisit trauma training, new trauma science? How do you constantly deal with what your staff bring into the space? So then when you get to the point of young people with complex CPTSD and the like into a space, that you are really robustly prepared to welcome that in, because whether or not the young person names it, it's in the space, so you're dealing with it. And it gets dangerous when that's not named and when it's not welcomed. And too often you will find in supportive sectors that they're so afraid of the T word, trauma, big or small, that's actually where it causes a lot of space for damage for everyone involved, vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, and re-traumatization from. So it's all, for us, it's all about creating a program, organizational health. We do that by having our whole organization attends the same trainings twice a year. Then each individual department has reflection sessions where new trauma science is brought to the space, and perhaps certain new sharings by young people are brought to the space once a month for each department. And then all of our staff are welcome to join supervision as well, directly with our head of organizational health. So it's really about vigilance, vigilance and constant learning and embedding. It's about responsible planning and engagement, so that you really are aware of of the myriad needs of who you're providing for. And well-being has to be the number one priority above and beyond everything else. Artistic creation and engagement is a tool, not an objective, or not, and a product is never the objective there. Hope that answers your question a little bit.
Thank you. So if I don't know if maybe Alison or Dima or Ali, do you guys have questions for each other? Maybe that could be something that, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think that could be an interesting one, actually, if anything comes up.
Yeah, I'm interested, of course, with the work that Playful Progress is doing, and what Alison said is, I think, is very interesting. I'm just wondering, because sometimes you want to create safe places for people to express themselves and everything, but for example, what we face is that we're in our countries, and I'm pretty sure in some ways in everywhere in the world, that even the person willing to give a safe space is not able to find their own safe space. And when you can't guarantee this, it's really that puts the life of everyone at risk. And so I always wonder what are the tools to create this, because nowadays, you know, in this societies are always going into more individualistic thoughts. I'm not able to pronounce
it's a difficult
word.
one. It's a difficult one. It's all right.
Yeah, so and the sense of community is just you know, getting because of wars, because of all the disruptions that's happening, all the social structures are being you know, broke. For example, us in Beirut, me and Dima are still there, but we have so many friends who left, and our safety was based on the presence of these people, of the spaces where we meet. So I'm just wondering, how can people, first of all, create safe space for themselves, and be able to say that whatever happens, I can just help and everyone, and make everyone feel safe, especially people who are less privileged, or you know, living in hard conditions.
The 5 million, well, more than that dollar question, because it's what we're all looking after in this highly individualistic, capitalist driven world. You know, how that is the very question that I think, you know, yeah, okay, we're technically a charity, but I think we're more a social experiment that's really trying to answer that question in our own way. It's very much about, yeah, what does retain or promote community resilience. The very first thing is you have to be a certain level of self-aware before you enter into the space, because there are a lot of people with brilliant intentions who say, oh, I would like to help this, who will walk in before having a look at, oh, why are you wanting to do that? How, does that play into savior complex? What is that? What are you, you know, you do have to do a ton of digging into self and knowing your own motivations before I think there's any, you know, outward reach towards anyone. So you're totally spot on. Of course, that's the very first step. Everyone needs to be aware coming through the door that there's a high level of personal responsibility that is number one priority before anything else. Put your mask on before you put someone else's on. That's kind of the first principle, I think. And then how do you, as either an organization or a people manager, how do you support artists who are highly unsupported by the industry itself, you know, freelance musicians and visual artists whose livelihoods are incredibly unsafe, especially during COVID. Like that was a huge challenge we had to look at, because of course our number one priority is to our young people and our service users. But like, if our staff isn't well, how can they can't provide good service to the young people. So it's really looking at high duty of care to young people means high duty of care and high investment in staff, and especially freelancers who don't get that security anywhere else. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I hope it's touching on some of the points here. And so,
yeah, of course, it's an endless debate anyway, because it's a constant changing of situation, and therefore constant changing of the definition of safety. It always depends on, you know, whatever politician said, or whatever war started, or whatever, you know, it's a very unstable world. So safety is always at risk, I think.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
Thank you, Alison. That was fortunately I could relate to that a little too much. Dima, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Dima, sorry, 1 second, but I wanted to say also, I had the privilege to attend one of Play for Progress internal team training, not training, let's say, I don't know how you describe it, Alison, but the idea that this is also, I remembered, like, as an example of what you are both discussing, the idea to nurture, you know, a safe space for the team as well. So the theme was rest, and how do people rest? And it was really interesting with the lead therapist at Pay for Progress, because we always dismiss what rest is and what a safe place is, and how do we rest amidst a lot of the complex topics we addressed today. But yeah, that was a side note. Dima, you had a question?
There's one side note I want to add to that. I'm so sorry, Dima, which is, and the really important question of sometimes our bodies aren't safe, especially for a lot of our young people coming in. Their body is not a safe space. It hasn't been, if they have been victims of violence or torture or the like, and abuse of various descriptions. What does then that have to say about safety? And then there's a question kind of if you have been displaced, and only increasingly as we encounter more conflict and more climate chaos, how, when even more of us are displaced, how can you carry safety with you? Is that possible? And safety can perhaps mean those people you surround yourself with. So for example, over COVID, we had to change venues quite a few times because they shut due to COVID. You know, creative spaces didn't exist, so we would have to move. So we came up for us, what is that? What does safety mean? If it's not the four walls, if it's not your own body, if safety resides and must live or be fostered in interpersonal relationships, how do you do that? How do you manage that? How do you sustain that, etc.? I'm so sorry, Dima, I'm done.
Well, I want to say on a side note as well that it is very impressive that to be able to sustain your work as groups in such a condition. So that's really, really empowering to know. And I don't know if we have time, but I want to ask the curators, Rania and Ghazaleh, about the idea. How did you came up with the idea of the exhibition? And what's the things that you learned from through this experience, and how do you think it is related to the topic that we are discussing today?
Rania, you want to take it? Or shall I?
I think we need to share. think we need to share. I'm happy to start quickly.
Go for it. Go for
it's
it.
A collaborative.
It is.
Yeah,
through and through.
It honestly started with actually the director of the gallery contacting us because it was a research-based project on Kalila Wa Dimna. And when we started the discussions, it's about this famous basically story that was traveling all around the world. And we thought, you know, in our time now, with all the complex issues that we discussed today, we are missing on imagination and storytelling and sharing stories and listening mainly. So we thought, why not take this text that traveled a lot, and for sure for some reason it was translated many times, so it must have resonated with different cultures, and let's see how it would resonate in the context of, how do you say, very much disruptive societies that are exposed to a lot of media and news all the time. How do you slow down, read an ancient text, and as artist and organization interpret it, or like get inspired, especially in relation to the theme of friendship and of sharing conversations to understand each other between the animals? And how can you bring that text and, you know, address issues that actually matter for you and for your surrounding? So yeah, this is how we thought about it, but I'm sure Ghazaleh will have also her input.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, like Rania said, it started as a research project that our third partner, Rachel, because this is actually a trifecta. So she was researching the tales in the context of her work at King's College at the time, and it's funny because when Yahya, the gallery director, contacted me and Rania, we both had a kind of individual relationship to the tales. I think Rania is probably much more familiar with them because they're very common in the Middle East, and they're used educationally for young children. They see them often in as like animated stories, animations on the TV for kids, whereas I grew up in France, so I wasn't really exposed to it. But I very vividly remember when I was learning the Fables de La Fontaine in France in school. I came home and my father was looking at my homework, and he looked at me and he went, "You know, they stole this from us, right?" And that's when he told me about Kalila Wa Dimna. And so it's very funny, when Yahya approached us, I was like, wait, this rings a bell. Oh, this is what it is. And yeah, like you said, Rania, there's a reason that they've been traveling all over the world and that they're still so present, is that they're just incredibly relevant. And I think we were very much inspired by this particular fable, the tale of the four friends, because it literally encapsulates the core of the entire project, which is collaboration, which is strength through diversity, and as well, I think a deep respect for friendship. And I think that's really what we wanted to showcase with this exhibition, and I think we've been quite successful, actually. So yeah, thanks for that, Dima. That's a really nice question.
I also think one of, if I can add this little bit, one of the most important aspects of this specific chapter of Kalila Wa Dimna was breaking the fear between the animals, because at the beginning, when they narrate, they say that each animal was afraid of the other, and until the hunter or the evil came, that they united. And I think this is a very important point of the story, to break fear and to break these boundaries between each other as people, to unite against any, big evil or anything that is threatening to our safe spaces and places and the people that we love and care for.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Ali. I think that is a good place to stop. Rania, you want to wrap up?
I feel like we exceeded the time without even noticing. First time it happened in the series, but it's really nice to have a open conversation. I feel things open up when we start the Q&A. It was really amazing to have you on this last talk. A lot to discuss. I want to say that we will keep adding content from your work on the project website, and that will be like a sort of archiving. Content can always be added, and everyone, you have now the links of the artist and of Play for Progress organization. You can follow up on their future projects, and yeah, that's another conversation. So Alison, Ali, and Dima, thank you so much for joining us today. And I don't know, I'm happy if you want to share a final thought quickly, so please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rania and Zalia and Rachel, for inviting us and for giving us this opportunity to come here to London and see the work of other artists. Thank you, everyone who attended this talk, and thank you, Alison, for your input. I'm so happy that we met virtually, not in person, hopefully to meet one day. So really, thank you all for the efforts, and we hope for future collaborations.
Thank you, Ali.
Also, I want to thank everyone for attending and joining us in this talk. I just want to wrap up, say final note on this. Basically, Kalila Wa Dimna short animation movie was basically a reflection on the unity of the world against the pandemic. I sensed that through social media, and I am sure and I have faith that there are good people around the world that will unite someday to fight those evil ones who are so many. So thank you for being part of this talk, because I think this kind of your interest is very value for us. And thank you, Zalia, Rania, and Alison, for everything, and yeah, for this nice collaboration.
It's our pleasure, truly.
I'm loath to take the last word. Thank you all so much. What a gift.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks,
Okay.
Rania.
And definitely staying in touch.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.